Hey, Barbara, how you doing?
Good. Hey, Mike, how's it going? It's nice to see you on Zoom.
Yeah. Um, so you're a realtor,
I am.
and you've been a realtor for quite a while now.
Yes, about 16 years licensed, and a couple years before that as an unlicensed assistant.
Wow. So maybe can we just kind of start back at the beginning? Um, what were you doing before you got into real estate?
I was working in an admin position for Wells Fargo home equity department. And prior to that, I had my own business, a clothing store.
So you had already been sort of had the entrepreneurial spirit.
Right. Yep, already a little bit of that, owning my own small business. And then the significance maybe of the Wells Fargo job is that I was a little bit in touch with the mortgage industry side,
Right.
but probably more importantly, the paperwork pushing, which it turns out to be pretty important in real estate as well.
How did the clothing store do?
It was not a big success for us. But I loved the idea of it. And I loved being my own boss, and I loved being in charge, and I loved setting my hours and being in control of everything.
Yeah.
So very successful in that regard, in terms of allowing me to understand that, yeah, I could do it, number one, and number two, that I liked doing it.
Yeah. So I'm always sort of interested in that transition that happens, especially someone like yourself who, you just didn't wake up at 18 years old as an entrepreneur. You had some experience in the business world working for someone else, and then you transition into real estate, becoming a realtor, which I consider to be an entrepreneurial job. What was kind of, can you just take me through what was happening there, and what kind of helped you make the decision to make this transition?
Well, Mike, I'd like to tell you is because I had all this foresight and insight, and it was a true entrepreneurial spirit, but I needed to make some money. And I was set up with against like a decision, at that point, am I going to continue on a journey with this big box bank, which I could do. They were getting ready to offer me a better position, more money. And I was going to take it because I was kind of up against that push. I had to do something. I was, I don't know, I must have been about 30 years old, and it was kind of time to do something. And at the same time, a good friend of mine said that her friend, who was a realtor, was looking for a part-time assistant. And in my mind, there was like the discrepancy between a part-time real estate assistant and a full-time employee at, a big institution. Like there was a big financial discrepancy there. Like one was like going to be easy to make ends meet, and one was going to be really suspect. But I took a gamble and I went with the part-time work with a licensed agent and did what I could to make ends meet.
And then you were in this part-time role for how long before you sort of said, hey, I'm going to go for it?
I think I was probably in it for about a year and a half before I decided. And there's kind of, I will say, there's a saying in real estate, if you have an assistant, you're just training them to be a realtor, right? Because not anybody, but a lot of people who get into that role of being an assistant and learning all the ins and outs of the trade, if you choose to make that leap, you already have the skill set and the knowledge. You might as well get the money.
Right.
And then, I don't want to say that I was only focused on the financially driven side of real estate, because when I went into the assistant position, I'd already owned several of my own homes. I'd always kind of been tinkering around in that. So it was already an inherent love of mine. I never thought that I would be able to mesh that into a career, but it just, it worked out that way for me.
Huh. So you were already kind of had your toe dipped into the water of real estate, even by the time you started becoming an assistant.
Yeah.
Huh. So then what do you do next? You just go and you tell your boss, hey, I'm going to get my license to compete with you.
I don't think it went like that. For sure it didn't go like that. I think it kind of went more like, oh, by the way, I got my license and here's my resignation. I mean, it was, it was done, with the best of intentions, but, at any time you're transitioning out of a position, I think you need to sort of be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do remember was sitting down with the manager of my branch at that point in time and saying, hey, I'm going to get my real estate license, or I'm going to get my real estate license and I would like to come and work for the branch. And he's like, I see him like pull up a little bit and he's like, well, let's sit down and talk about this. And I said, oh, okay, so we schedule a meeting and he asked me a couple of questions and he's like, why do you think that this might be a good fit for you? Have you ever, owned your own business before? And I didn't really realize at the time, I didn't really put it together that I had owned my own business and I had been making it work. But when I told him that I had actually owned my own clothing business, he was like, oh, it's like a light went off in his head that, oh, you are going to be a good match for the company. And this is a funny story. I just remembered this the other day because I decided to tell you this over the interview, but my principal broker has had some medical concerns lately. And so he's kind of been top of mind. I've been thinking about him quite a bit. And one of the things I remembered was I got my license in April, and the following January, we had a sales meeting where they talked about production and awards and who got awards and, who the top agent was. And we went through all this stuff. And I was still really green. I had less than a year in the business. And I felt like really out of place most of the time when I went to the sales meeting, like I was awkward. I didn't speak the language. You know how that is. And so he was wrapping up the award ceremony and he's like, and I have to, I'd be remiss if I didn't let you guys know of an honorable mention. And I'm barely paying attention at this time, right? Because I'm whatever. And he's like, it's Barbara, who just missed making the 100% club by about, $1,500. Like I was the top rookie agent of that year. And I was so startled. I had no idea. And he looked at me and he's like, how did you do it? And I was so surprised. And I was just like, I just thought that's what everybody did. And I could tell you, everybody in the room turned around and shot me daggers because they were like, oh, I don't know. I just took to it.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's and it's sort of funny how some people will celebrate your success and others won't.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the manager who interviewed you, who was like, whoa, wait, you want to stop becoming an assistant, part of the machine? Now you actually want to go and become one of us?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like, and I feel like I've definitely been on both sides of that coin, like a little bit of fear, like, some young rookie agent's going to come up and take business away from me or whatever. It doesn't work that way, but every now and then I get a fear about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an understandable thing. And then we kind of realize there's enough to go around.
There's totally enough to go around. And I'm not going to do it forever. So we need the rookies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to when you were a rookie, that sounds like you started out pretty strong. Like you get your license, you become a realtor, and now you actually need to start telling your friends, hey, here I am. Like, how did you get started into like marketing yourself?
Well, so the company that I started with, they had a new agent training program where they would offer, they'd bring new agents in as a group. They'd send them through training as a group, and then they'd sort of have a weekly accountability meeting as a group to keep us on track. And one of the chores we had, or one of the tasks we had as new agents, was to put together our database, a list of people, family, friends, people that we thought would do business with us. And these people were like, okay, well, I have 150 people in my database, and, I got my aunts and uncles and my, my vet and my mechanic. And I was like, oh, and they get to me and they're like, how many people do you have in your database? And I lied, right? Because I was like, I had 12 people in my database. So I just lied. I'm like, I have 25, I'm like, it wasn't like, and everyone, the same thing. Like, I think in real estate, I think the thing that has made me successful is not just that I love the job so much, and that I'm able to stay on track with things, although maybe not your question, because I'm like not on track right now, but just inherently having really good instincts about the market. And so that is what has sort of like kept me in the loop for so long, especially when we've seen so many crazy things. Now, I have seen so many crazy things with market crashes and, the worldwide pandemic. And that's a good question. How do you stay focused? How do you continue to market yourself in a world where, anything can happen at any point in time? And I guess the most relevant thing that I or anybody in my position could do is client contact, right? And there's so many different ways you can do that. You can do social media, you can send out mailers. I find the most effective thing, Mike, is to pick up the phone and call your people. Have a conversation. Have a point of reference to talk about. You're not just like, hey, how's the weather? What did you do last week? Like, have a relevant piece of real estate information which to kind of center your conversation around. Hey, I saw the house next door to you went on the market. That kind of stuff. People love to talk about real estate. Hey, I went through your neighbor's open house the other day, and this is how it compares to your house or whatever. Can you believe the pricing on that? Can you believe that's back on the market? There's always something to say about it.
Right.
Phone. And second to that, I think what a lot of people have found success with is the handwritten personal note. That's really big in our industry. Not like a direct mail initiative, but dear Mike, it's been a while. How have you been? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
An
Yeah.
antiquated, lost art of writing a note. But I'll say it's easier for me to pick up the phone.
Yeah, I don't think I've got a note in a while.
That's funny. I think I saw the mail has gotten slowed down with the election and pandemic.
So you're sort of in the flow now. I mean, you're a professional, you're seasoned. Let's go back to when you were first starting out and you only had that list of 12 people. What are your initial phone calls like? Are you just like letting people know that this is what I'm doing now, and if you ever need help, like how's that go?
Yeah, that's kind of okay. I keep telling you all these little anecdotes, but I do remember at one point in time, my sister was like, is this another real estate call? Because I'd be like, if I got to call 5 people a day and I only have 12 people in my database, my sister's getting a lot of phone calls. But guess what? She's my very best client to this day. Yeah. But yes, that is how the conversation goes.
So I remember you and I have talked about this before, that everyone else was bragging about, their hundreds of contacts, and you mentioned like the mechanic. Well, that's just maybe somebody they know. That's not really someone who maybe has the level of trust, the relationship maybe that you had with those first 12 people. And that's always sort of been your foundation. So you've grown literally just from those first 12 people to probably hundreds of people now, right?
Hundreds of people. And it's definitely what we would call, I mean, like a lot of sales are referral-based business. So my best clients are people that I have worked with in the past, or those people or people that they have referred me to. Because like you said, there's already a baseline there of trust and understanding and knowledge. Or my mechanic, I'm just like one person driving through complaining because I'm at the mechanics. I'm already not happy. So he's never going to be a good client.
Right. Yeah. All right, cool. So we've kind of covered some of the marketing aspects. I know that you and I over the years have talked about, sort of maybe the programs that some agencies will try to put their realtors through, and you've always just sort of stuck to your guns and found that the best way to get new business is to do a good job and stay in touch with your existing clients. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So along the way, over these 16 years, has there ever been a time like when you doubted yourself or felt like, ooh, what did I do? I left Wells Fargo, the security of this job. And
No, really the only time that ever came into play was during the market crash. But I mean, I could have been in any position and had that thought.
yeah,
So, no, not as, no, I love my job. There's so much satisfaction that comes with helping somebody through a pretty momentous decision for the most part. For most buyers or sellers, it's a pretty momentous decision. And to feeling like I was able to successfully educate them and guide them to a highly desired outcome. Not just like, oh, thank God this is over, we got through it, but a sense that, they really did the very best they could under the current market conditions.
yeah. So
It's
from behind
really
the scenes,
rewarding.
I'm sorry?
It's really rewarding.
Yeah. So from behind the scenes, I think maybe people have an idea of what a realtor does, but what does a realtor really do? Like you have so many aspects along the way to keeping a deal together, right? I mean,
Yeah.
contractors, you give interior design tips. Can you talk about, I mean, all of the things that maybe people don't know about?
Like maybe you want to talk about the real value that a realtor can bring to the table.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
basically there are two parts to
Maybe
being
you could start asking the questions and I'll answer them.
yeah, good at that. That's what a good realtor does. They direct the process, Mike. We're going this way. So yeah, like you said, there's really two different hats. There's like the business hat, like how am I gonna keep my pipeline full of business, and then how am I going to serve that business? So, the education piece with a buyer and seller is the biggest component. Everybody thinks, and I'm not saying it can be very easy to buy or sell a house, but 9 times out of 10, you're coming up against a consideration that your average buyer or seller is not going to really be able to navigate on their own, and specifically not within the confines of our timelines. Like we have 1,000 timelines that you have to pay attention to, and each one would remove a contingency in which would protect either the buyer or the seller. So kind of managing that timeline and educating your client on every step of the way, because they kind of think that they already know. And a lot of them are really, really well educated. They're really well educated about the market. They have looked online. They've done a ton of research. But keeping them on track and going through, like you said, all the inspections, like how do you get a green buyer through? Okay, well, here's a good example. I just had a first-time home buyer purchase a house, go under contract on a house. And he's a pretty savvy guy. He's in the construction business, but he's buying a house that's 60 years old and it's his first house. So he comes into this thinking that no problem, he can fix this, any problem, he's got it, right? He can handle any problem that this house can throw at him. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. So what do? We go through a home inspection and he gets the home inspection report. It's 40 pages, right? They're all 40 pages. And when you sit down to read a 40-page inspection report on a house, I don't care who you are, it's intimidating. You're like, whoa, didn't know that that was going to happen. And so being able to kind of navigate expectations about how you can solve problems. Let's not go crazy. Let's get an expert in here to tell us how much that roof is going to cost. Let's get somebody in here to tell us exactly what is wrong with the sewer and how much that is going to cost. And more information. Let me get you more information. Let me get you more information. And so now we have gathered all of the inspection information within our inspection timeline. They're still overwhelmed. He's still completely overwhelmed. He's like, I can't take this on. I'm like, well, now we ask the seller to step in and contribute to this so that we can move forward. And I think the most important piece to ever tell a buyer or a seller is that you always have a decision. You always have a decision. You can terminate at any time. It might cost you some money, but that is a decision. Like, you're in control of it. You can accept, you can reject, you can negotiate, you can terminate. And I think, nobody wants to lose money and terminate in that fashion, but knowing that they're still in control of the decision is a pretty powerful place to put somebody. So again and again, I had a conversation with this client, up until the very end of closing, when he called me and he's like, I don't care if I lose my earnest money. I'm freaking out. I don't know about this house. What's going to happen when I take the wall down in the basement and I see what's happening in the basement? I just don't know about this house. Let me get you some more information. Let's look at what the market's doing. Okay, look, you can't get in any other house in this market because it's too tight, number one. So if you pull out of this one, it's going to take you months and months and months, maybe years, to get back in because of current market conditions. And then let's talk about any house that you might buy where you take the sheetrock down in the basement. Like, that's going to be a question in any house you buy, unless you buy brand new construction. More information. So finally I get this guy where he's not only comfortable about this house, he's like blowing up my phone asking if we can close early. I'm so excited. And now I feel really good about what I've done and what I've performed for him. That's what I love about it. It's like, and at any point in the time, like, I wouldn't, like, if he had decided that wasn't for the house for him and he wanted to sit out the market for a year, like, that would be tough, because while I educate him, I educate myself, and I've come to understand that he's buying a great house at a good price in a crazy market. And what happened is we did go back, we got all this information, we went back to the seller, we got a $40,000 price reduction in a seller's market, crazy. And then we sent the appraiser out, and the house appraised at, I'm going to say, $60,000 above his sales price. He's thrilled. I'm thrilled.
You're really good at taking that thing which is overwhelming.
Yes.
And like you said, go get more information, but that information helps it takes the emotion out of it, because you have data and you're really good at breaking it down into these little pieces.
Yeah. And then to go back to what you said before, like, he was a referral from a referral. So I already had not a strong baseline of trust, but I already had a little bit of foundation with him. And that is really important, because if I just find a buyer or a seller off of the internet, it's much harder to solidify that relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, because you have that sales component, like, you know what that's like.
Oh yeah. Well, it's much nicer to have someone who already trusts you refer you to someone else. I mean, that's a night and day compared to starting something that's cold where you've got to establish all that trust.
Right.
A lot more work.
So much more work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see. Would you consider being a mentor if there were someone who were coming up and maybe wanted to consider getting into real estate? They weren't sure. Is that someone that you could help or talk to?
I would. I was talking, we had some turnover recently in my office and I have a new principal broker now. And I was talking to him yesterday as part of his intro calls to all the agents, just what are you looking for? What do you need? And when I was kind of asking him his vision for the office and where he sees this going. And he wants to see us grow the number of agents in our office, and that he's been doing some recruiting and he had a couple of people coming on board. And I'm like, well, who are your new recruits? And he's like, they're totally new. They're not even licensed yet. They're coming in. And I thought to myself, cautiously, I don't want to get carried away, but I thought to myself cautiously, I'm like, wow, that might be really rewarding to work with a new agent. Like there's this saying that you can't keep what you don't give away. And I kind of agree with like that. It reinforces it. For me, I think it would reinforce and also give back to a new agent, because I didn't get here on my own. I like to think that I scratched and clawed my way to where I am and that nobody helped me, but it's not true. I had a lot of help along the way.
Yeah.
And so I can in turn offer that back to somebody.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of mutually beneficial. Yes. Yes, I would mentor somebody.
All right. Awesome.
Do you have
Well,
somebody that needs mentoring?
huh?
Do you have somebody that needs mentoring?
Well, you never know.
You never
You
know.
never know. I may find someone and direct them your way.
I talk to him, give him my number.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming on today. Anything else that you would like to get into that we haven't discussed?
No, not off the top of my head. I think you did a nice job of covering the basics, and I appreciate your time for sure.
All right. You too. Thanks, Barbara.
All right. Bye, Mike.